Before you go to Formic, let's talk briefly. Does anyone use HopGuard? No one I've ever met has ever used HopGuard successfully. There's a new thing called HopGuard 3. I don't know if it works or not. I've never used it. Nobody I know or ever talked to has ever used it, but it's out there. So if you're wondering about it, it's there. If you want to try it, report back to us and tell us how it worked. All right, now back to Formic.
Okay. I created a little, anyone have to take a snapshot of this before they leave. I kind of put everything into order here. So application, you have two treatment options. You can do a 14-day treatment or a 20-day treatment. With a 14-day, you are doing one treatment in 14 days, and you are using 2 of these edge to edge in your hive for 14 days. They want you to disturb the hive as little as possible. So basically that means don't go in your hive for 2 weeks. Temperature, your temperature range has to be between 50 and 85. You have to make sure it has fresh air. I don't have a bottom board, but the same as what Howard was saying is you have to take off your entrance reducer. If you have a permanent, and if you get FormicPro, there is a link, you can go online and watch the video. That's what I did. And I wrote down everything that video said. If you've got some kind of permanent reducer on there, and this is why I brought this. If you have 2 double deeps, you're treating them in the middle. And you can take your hives and just give it space. I always question this because I'm like, well, what if it rains? George, I know you do this a lot. What if it rains and my hives are like this?
Yeah, but with Formic, I don't set my boxes back. I close it all up and just keep
If you have the entrance, they were saying if you have permanent reducers on,
got it.
you
If
have
you don't
to
have the
space it.
ability to do it.
Yeah. So
Bees actually form a line in front of that, and their wings are like an umbrella, an awning, and that's.
Oh, okay.
The other thing you have to remember is the rain's only going to come down
That
the
way.
very front of that hive body
Mhm.
on the inside, and basically it'll run right through and out. Even if you have a solid bottom board, it's going to hit that solid bottom board. And if your hive is oriented backside up, the water just runs out of the hive.
True. I can tell you what I do. When I want to space or when I want to do something, all of us use styrofoam in insulation in the wintertime. I get a nice big piece of insulation, I hang it off the front, and I waste with bricks on the top, and it creates an awning.
Do that with a piece of plywood all year
Yeah,
round.
and you can do it with anything, and it just creates like an umbrella awning. So let me just go through a single deep. A single deep, one treatment looks like this. A single deep double treatment is 1 deep, just in the middle, leave it on through 10 days. On the 11th day, you come back, put another one in, and leave it for 10 days. If the weather is uncooperative, let's say on day 11, it's 95 degrees and you can't put this on, don't. Because the first 3 days is when it releases the most, and these things really stink. By the way, this is what it looks like. I'm not taking it out of the bag like George did, because these things, the smell will just kill you, but it comes in a pouch like this for a small dose. This is only 2 doses, this is only 4 strips. So I would imagine this will treat 2 hives. So you can take a break as soon as the weather breaks and it gets back in the range. They said to go ahead and continue with the second application. All right, so we've got application, do not disturb. It says make sure the colony has good food resources. I have no idea why. I mean, you would want to make sure they have good food resources all the time. So why during food like FormicPro can be used during the honey flow. I think that's the main thing. You can put this on when your hoop super is on. Whether you want to or not is a personal choice. I usually try to get them on. I don't like the smell. It does not leave a residue in the honey or in the wax. FormicPro naturally occurs already in your honey. Temperature and ventilation, I covered temp, airflow, no entrance reducer, take that out. You can shim it or add an extra box. So you could even add an extra box to top it and just to give it some ventilation. Shifting boxes, covered that. Hive strength. So when Mark was showing that chart with the they actually show you this chart in the video. And the 2 times that they do it, they actually put marks are like here and here. So basically it's as your bee population is brooding up. So as you're rearing lots of bees, you would put it on. So I'm guessing it's like April, May. And then where they show it as doing it a second time is as that's starting to come down. So I'm guessing that's like July, August. I think that's going to be tough in July because it's kind of hot out, but that's what they show on the video for time to do it. Yeah, so when you're rearing up and when you're starting to decrease configuration. So if you do run a double deep, like George does not suggest, you're going to put these 2 strips like I showed you for the single in the same spot. And you're going to put your second brood box on top. And they said it is okay if you've got, so if you're demorating and you've got a queen excluder in here, they said that's fine. Anything else? Safety. Wear chemical resistant gloves. Don't pull it out of the bag like George does without any gloves. They even say to wear a mask and something to keep the smell out. I took these out without anything on and I was like, holy moly, like it makes you jump back. Safety follow-up. Here's the interesting part. 1 month after your treatment, make sure you're queen right. Because I did lose a queen. Well, this is organic. You use Aquivar?
It's gonna kill your queen.
You
I
don't
wouldn't
like queens. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't like that.
I lost 1 queen. I use it a lot. I don't lose them. I've lost 1.
I was gonna say, if you're gonna use that stuff, use it in the spring. I wouldn't, or spring, early summer. But I wouldn't use it in the fall because in the fall, it drives all the bees out and usually the queen dies and you can't requeen
And then
Right.
in the fall.
Right.
It's too late. They can't get mated. So
Right, well, they're not suggesting fall. They're suggesting rearing up and
August,
just
September.
come down. Huh?
in August and September, if you're trying to requeen in August and September, they're not
Yeah,
gonna
no, I
mate.
said July and August.
I know, but the paper up there, it said
Yeah,
August, September.
Oh, did it?
You said July, yeah.
And it don't work.
It's from,
Okay,
this is from Nod, that's what they say, is,
is this the stuff I sent you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I wrote it wrong. I did this like last night in a hurry trying to get this done. And I was looking at that chart. So when I just looked at it now, I picked up July, August. But I mean, it's a good point. You have to consider if you're gonna lose your queen, can you requeen? So it's definitely a good point to look at when you do it.
Just, it's gonna get over 85 degrees in August. Is that a big deal if it gets like 95 and?
The first 3 days, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't wanna, you absolutely don't wanna put it on.
I've used Formic for 10 years and you will find somehow 3 days in July with the temperature less than 85, but you've got to be flexible to put it on in that time. You know what I mean? Because a lot of time in July and August is for 85.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, every year for 10 years, I found 3 days where I can get Formic on. It's fun.
I mean, this is why beekeeping is hard for some people. Some of us have jobs and some of us work. And when the temperature is right, I can't necessarily get into my hive that day.
No, I-
So that's why you've got to pick the method that is right for you. Because not everything is going to work for everybody. It doesn't always cooperate with our schedules.
You don't put Formic on a hot, humid day. Basically, gonna
You
Kill your
can't,
hive.
you will kill the hive in the hole.
But that's what caught my eye.
So verify that you're clean, right? Treat all your colonies at the same time. Now, I can tell you, I've got 2 that I will definitely treat. I've got 1 that took a brood break because it was a swarm from a friend. So it hasn't really been producing bees for the last month. So even though you should do every one in your hive, I'm probably not gonna do that because it's got an extremely low population. Just my choice. Allow a month, if you're gonna do treatments, allow a month in between, and here's the best part. You don't have to remove these, you can leave them in, they kind of just break down. However, if you do remove it, you can compost it. But
cool.
that's what it says. I had to read it like a couple times, I'm like, what did they just say? Throw that in the compost? Okay,
Don't we have a talk coming up Monday?
yes.
yes,
By the lady who
Part of that company, yeah.
yeah, the Women's Bee Group has a talk coming up. Do we have to register for that? Already done, so.
It said you don't need to read.
That's what I thought, yeah, it said this one you didn't need to, because,
Now, Formic, 2 strips of Formic historically has been the only mite treatment that will kill mites underneath the brood, underneath the capping. So that's been the historic sort of positive about using Formic. You put 2 pads in there and pretty much every queen and every mite will be dead. Every mite will be dead. But that's the nice thing, it's like a flash treatment, all of a sudden, all the mites in the hive are died. All the other treatments, the only treatment is working is on the mites on the bees. and not the mites and the brood. Formic does all of it. So that's the benefit of using, but you have to use 2 pads of Formic to get that benefit. 1 pad of Formic doesn't, you really need to have a high amount.
So if you have a double brood, if you have the double deeps, then you're gonna put them like you had them,
In
just
between.
between them. The 2 like that, you just leave them there.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I forgot to say, it penetrates the brood. Is that what George just said?
Yes.
Okay.
Can be used on nuke, right?
Do not use this on a nuke. Do not try to use a half pad on a nuke.
What
People
if you got double deep?
don't do it. I've killed nukes with Formic. Ernie's our nuke expert. Would you and
I've used it on a nuke.
1 pad on a nuke?
It-
On a double?
On a bunch of nukes, and out of all of those nukes, it killed 1 queen, but it was successful for the others, but it was a weak hive.
And you need 6 frames of bees. Formic's the most toxic thing on bees and brood that we use, okay? So, and the toxicity is gonna be higher, is if it's hotter and more humid, you're gonna have more toxicity. If your bee population is small and they're not able to move it, you're gonna have more toxicity. So you should have 6 seams of bees before you put Formic on a hive. You put Formic on a hive that only has 3 or 4 frames of bees on it, you're gonna have less afterwards. So it's a very effective, at least historically, it's been a very effective treatment, but you've got to be careful. And as Donna said, you want it, if you're running singles, make sure you put a shim above it. Don't put your Formic on and then put your inner cover right on top of that. That's a setup for disaster too. Yeah, you're gonna end up with some dead stuff, you know.
So 6 seams if you're running double deeps
Yeah.
or 6,
Either way.
either way, between 2 of them, not
You
12.
want 6 seams of bees at a minimum before you put Formic on there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Ed's our Formic user.
Question back, go ahead.
Bernie says he agrees with you, George. Would not use it.
We did it 1 year and had bad outcomes, but I've heard people that cut a pad in half and use a half a pad on a nuke. I used a single pad on a nuke and it had bad outcomes.
What kind of frames if you're doing double?
I still would be cautious about it. I would use Apogard on a nuke. I think Apogards are perfect for nukes. You could dose it small amount. You could dose it, put it in there. You don't have honey on your nuke. I'm a big fan of Apogard on nukes if you're going to treat
That's
it.
the thymol, right?
Thymol on nukes, yeah.
It gets confusing with all the different names.
You mentioned you need the 2 pads now, so that means not the 1 pad, then wait and put the other pad on. You need the 2 pads on simultaneously to get into the
brood.
Okay.
Yeah, you can use 1 pad, but the reason why you use 1 pad for 2 weeks and another pad for 2 weeks is to cover a brood cycle.
Right.
Right. While the 2 pads once isn't covering a whole brood cycle, but you don't need to in theory because it kills all the mites underneath the brood. So you can do a one-time treatment and get all the mites killed. Does that make sense?
Yes, that
Makes sense.
why would people do it the other way then?
Less
Maybe.
toxicity.
Less toxicity.
Because if you put
yeah.
2,
Gotcha.
it's effective, but it
Just kills them in a different way over
The
time.
the whole hive comes outside
now.
because it can't stand the.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to log on Monday and listen to this talk because, you know, I'm as an aside for 2 minutes. I used to use Mite Away Quick Strips, which is also Formic, made by the same company. And now Mite Away Quick Strips is no longer available, and you only have FormicPro. And FormicPro has less formic acid in it than Mite Away Quick Strips, and the delivery system is different. I have big questions of whether or not the FormicPro is actually killing mites underneath the brood. So this year, I'm going to use FormicPro, but I'm going to use 1 treatment and then 2 weeks later use another treatment and cover the brood cycle because I wasn't convinced that 2 pads at once was killing mites underneath the brood last year. But that's just one person's experience, which means nothing.